Iran, US, to negotiate in Oman amid deep rifts and mounting war fears. Activists plan new, bigger flotilla to try to bring aid to Gaza. UN rights chief appeals for $400 million as crises mount and funding shrinks. Japan PM wins Trump backing ahead of snap election. UK PM apologizes to Epstein victims. The United States and Iran are set to hold high-stakes talks in Oman on Friday, focusing on Iran's nuclear program, as tensions remain high and the risk of wider conflict in the Middle East looms. Both sides say they are willing to pursue diplomacy, but sharp disagreements over the scope of the talks could limit progress. Washington wants discussions to cover not only Iran's nuclear activities, but also its ballistic missile program, regional armed groups, and human rights issues, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said on Wednesday. Iran has rejected that broader agenda. Tehran says the talks in Muscat should focus solely on nuclear issues and will involve Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Esmail Baghaei said Tehran aims to reach a fair and dignified agreement on the nuclear issue and urged the United States to approach the talks with seriousness and realism. Iran's leadership remains concerned that U.S. President Donald Trump could still carry out threats of military action as U.S. naval forces increase their presence near Iran. Trump has warned that bad things could happen if no deal is reached. Activists behind an aid flotilla intercepted by Israel last year say they will attempt another mission to Gaza Strip in 2026, with plans for more than double the number of boats and up to 1,000 participants. The organizers said on Thursday that they aim to send around 100 boats carrying medics and aid workers. The announcement follows Israel's interception of the global Sumud flotilla last October, when about 40 boats were stopped at sea. During that operation, Israeli forces detained more than 450 activists, including Swedish climate campaigner Greta Thunberg. The new effort was announced at a gathering held at the foundation of former South African President Nelson Mandela in Johannesburg. Mandela's grandson, Mandla Mandela, who was detained during the previous mission, called on the global community to support the initiative. Israeli officials have repeatedly criticized such flotillas, describing them as publicity stunts. Israel controls access to Gaza and denies blocking humanitarian supplies, saying aid is allowed into the territory. However, Palestinians and international aid organizations say assistance remains insufficient, despite a ceasefire reached in October that included commitments to increase humanitarian deliveries. The United Nations Human Rights Chief Volker Turk has appealed for $400 million in funding, warning that cuts by major donors have pushed his office into, quote, survival mode. Speaking to delegates in Geneva on Thursday, Turk said the funding is urgently needed to address growing human rights crises in countries including Sudan and Myanmar. The appeal is $100 million less than last year, reflecting a major scaling back of operations after contributions fell sharply, particularly from the United States and European donors. Turk said his office raised alarms over serious abuses in Gaza, Ukraine, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Sudan, and Myanmar over the past year. However, funding cuts forced it to carry out less than half the number of monitoring missions compared with 2024 and reduce operations in 17 countries. Last year, the office faced a $90 million shortfall, resulting in the loss of about 300 jobs, Turk said. He warned that reduced funding has severely weakened investigations, including a UN probe into possible war crimes in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and cut Myanmar-related work by more than 60%, limiting evidence collection. Japanese Prime Minister Sunai Takaichi has received a full public endorsement from U.S. President Donald Trump, just 2 days before snap elections that polls suggest could deliver her coalition a sweeping victory. In a post on Truth Social, Trump praised Takaichi as a strong and wise leader who truly loves her country, and announced she will visit the United States on March 19. He also offered his complete and total endorsement. Takaichi, Japan's first woman prime minister, took office in October and is seeking a strong mandate in Sunday's election. Polls suggest her ruling Liberal Democratic Party and its coalition partners could secure a supermajority in the lower house. Trump said Washington and Japan are working toward a very substantial trade agreement and continue to cooperate closely on national security. Last year, the two sides reached a deal lowering U.S. tariffs on Japanese goods to 15% in exchange for investment commitments. While U.S. presidents typically avoid backing candidates in foreign elections, Trump has repeatedly broken with tradition, previously endorsing leaders including Javier Milei and Viktor Orban. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has apologised to the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, saying he was sorry for appointing Peter Mandelson as the UK's ambassador to the United States. Starmer said he was unaware of the extent of Mandelson's relationship with Epstein when he made the appointment in December 2024. Mandelson, a former senior Labour figure, has since come under scrutiny over his past ties to the disgraced financier. The Prime Minister reiterated his commitment to releasing the vetting advice he received before appointing Mandelson. However, he said he must also comply with a police request not to disclose material that could interfere with an ongoing investigation. Meanwhile, Kremlin officials dismissed reports suggesting Epstein may have had links to Russian intelligence. The Kremlin said it would not comment on what it described as unproven allegations circulating in Western media and raised by Poland's Prime Minister. The developments come amid renewed international scrutiny of Epstein's connections and the political fallout linked to them.